Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV. I'm the editor here at MetaStellar, and I'm here to tell you about the #1 free best-selling science fiction book on Amazon today, and it's about a robot who wakes up on an unmanned starship and doesn't know what's going on or what he's doing there. But before we get to that, we've got 9 other books to talk to about 9 other books to talk about on today's top 10 list. You see, every Friday, the team here at MetaStellar reads the first few chapters of every book on Amazon's top 10 list. And today I was helped out by assistant fiction editor Terrence Smith, marketing assistant Lilivette Dominguez-Torres, and community members Alex KOROLOV, Tim McHugh, and Carla Nordlund. If you want to join us, my email is in the description box below. Oh, and Terrence is here with us today. Hey, Terrence.
Get me out of here.
Okay, all right. So today's list includes a shape-shifting horse that's in love with a unicorn, a group of humans surviving a zombie apocalypse. Of course, we gotta have those books. A sexy old vampire, gotta have those too. And a war between humans and elves. The link to the article and to all the books is in the description box below. For those who are new, MetaStellar is an online magazine of speculative fiction. All the content is always free to our readers. We publish original short fiction, reprints, essays, and lots of book reviews like these. We are able to do this and keep all our content completely free thanks to our Patreon supporters. Thanks, guys. We love you. Oh, and our first anthology is out, and you can buy it, and the link is in the description box below. All right, we're currently putting together a second anthology. Okay. So, let's get to the books. Let's start with book number 10. Here it is. Let's make it a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. This book is called Kelpie House. It's by Frances Pauli, and it's the first of what will be the Kelpie's Forever fairy tale fantasy series. Usually the book is $4, but you get it for free, and it's in Kindle Unlimited, which bodes well for the rest of the books in the series. So I read this one, and when I first saw the cover, I thought there was going to be a horror book. And with that little script in the title, I thought maybe it was going to be like a lyrical or poetic horror book. And poetry and horror are 2 of my least favorite genres. So I was a little hesitant going into this. And the book does start out with a lyrical description of a unicorn city. So I guess that's where the poetic part comes in. But that's about it. No poetry in this book. And not a lot of horror either. So we start out with Bastian, who's a shape-shifting horse, or a Kelpie. And he's shifted into the form of a spider. And he is spying around a unicorn city because he really likes the taste of unicorns, but he's worried that the unicorns may have figured out that Kelpies are real, and which will bode not well for him. So he's spying, and he bites one of the unicorns, and she kind of swats him away. And
the unicorn gets radioactive spider powers, right?
I haven't read that far. Oh, and this Kelpie can also read minds. Anyway,
okay.
Then in the next scene, we switch to the unicorn he bit, and she's apparently a history student who's taken some time off to work in the museum, and she and her best friend may have found a diary that may prove that Kelpies exist, or maybe it doesn't. It doesn't actually mention Kelpies by name. It kind of hints at them. So she's kind of uncertain about this. Meanwhile, Bastian turns into a raven, flies home, and he lives with another Kelpie and a unicorn slave. And the unicorn slave, they drink its blood, and they make him a butler and a cook, and they have sex with it, or his housemate at least has sex with it. It is extremely disturbing. Then we switch back to the Lady Unicorn's point of view, and so I'm guessing they're gonna get together. And I read the description of the book, and yeah, this is a romance, and yeah, they do get together. and she's really young, and he's like hundreds of years old, and he's super creepy. So not for me, but it definitely not horror. It's a light paranormal fantasy style kind of writing, even though it's set in this like totally fantasy world. And the protagonists all have hooves. So it's very unusual setting. But aside from that, the tone is very familiar if you like paranormal or fantasy romance. As far as I've read, it wasn't horror. I mean, it was like, this is kind of disturbing, but you know, that's usual for romances. They often have kind of weird tropes. Okay, so moving on to Hidden by Shalini Boland. There it is. The first of 3 books in the Vampires of Marchwood paranormal romance series. The other books are $4 each, but they're both in Kindle Unlimited. And this is the second week in a row that this book has been on our top 10 list. So I guess people like it.
More paranormal vampire
Yeah,
romances.
people like it. Madison is going to a private school, and she's on the verge of being kicked out because she dresses like a goth and is rude to everybody. And then she inherits a house and money, and there's a vampire involved who's like over 100 years old that at some point she might fall in love with. So everything about that says that it's not for me. And I was the one reading it. I do have to say it's readable if you like those tropes. You know, female students falling in love with creepy old vampires. This is for you. Okay, next we have In Solitude's Shadow by David Green, the first of 3 books in the Empire of Ruin, a dark fantasy series. The other books are between $1 and $3 each, but they're all in Kindle Unlimited. And Lilibet Dominguez Torres read this one, and she says that there's a war between humans and elves, and the humans and the mages who are on their side are trying to eradicate the elves for good. There's a prologue hundreds years earlier where the humans and elves fought together against the common enemy, so they weren't always enemies. And then this common enemy kind of people thought that it went away and they weren't like scary anymore, but maybe they are. So Lilibet says the beginning of the book is fantastic, the writing is great, the characters are interesting, and the plot is intriguing enough to keep her going. And she says she definitely plans on reading this. It reminds her a little bit of The Witcher with all the conflicts against the elves and the other races. Then we have another book that Lilibet read, A Kingdom Scarred by K.A. Riley, the first of 3 books in the Fae of Tyria fantasy and romance series. The second book is $4, and the third one is currently available for pre-order and will be coming out this coming June. And the entire series is in Kindle Unlimited. And Lilibet says that this is a fantasy fae romance set in a mortal kingdom that was separated from the land of the Fae by deadly mist known as the Breath of the Fae, and no human has ever been able to walk through it and survive. And for hundreds of years, the Fae have been just another legend that parents scare their kids with. And Lyrin is deadly with a blade because of her father's training. Her mother died in a fire when she was a baby, and she herself has scars over her. And Lilibet says that she really enjoys the relationship between Lyrin and her father and her sister, and it's not the usual useless parental figure kind of fantasy, so she appreciates that. And she's being harassed, and the magic from the deadly mist calls to Lyrin and helps her survive the attack by making it possible for her to climb towards the land of the Fae. Meanwhile, the human kingdom is celebrating the deadly blood trials, and they're looking for champions from Lyrin's region, and that reminded Lilibet of the Hunger Games, and it made her even more interesting in the story. So she says that she wants to stick with this one as well. Then there's a book that I read, A Place Outside the Wild by Daniel Humphreys. And I am really unhappy I had to read this one. And our regular zombie apocalypse reader, Alex, couldn't take this one on as well. So this is the first of 4 books in the Z-Day post-apocalyptic survival series. The other books are $5 each, but they're all in Kindle Unlimited. And I don't like zombies. I don't like apocalypses. I'm not the target audience here. I want my escapist reading further removed from reality, please. So the book is about Miles, who used to work in the IT department, a couple of years out of college. And then the zombie virus hit, and like almost everyone died. And then we switch forward 8 years into the future. He's married, he's got a kid, and he's living in the settlement of a few dozen people, and it's kind of isolated, and there's politics about how the settlement is being run, and like interpersonal stuff. Not a lot of action in the beginning, other than a prologue when the zombies first attack. So not my kind of book, but again, it's definitely readable. There's a reason it's on this list. But I personally didn't get caught up in the story or the characters, and I really don't like the premise of having to kill zombies, and it just kind of grosses me out a little bit. And I also don't enjoy reading about the collapse of civilization. I get enough of that on the news. Next, we have a book that Terrence read, Pharoni by Colin Dodds, a standalone dystopian book. Usually it's $10, but today it's free, and it's in Kindle Unlimited. The author has several other books available on Amazon, and some of those are in Kindle Unlimited as well if you like this author. Terrence, what did you think of this book?
Well, initially, I thought this was going to be one that I wouldn't want anything to do with, because initially, like, I found the prose a little bit on the boring side. I had to reread lines because I forgot what the line said. But that could just be my self-diagnosed ADD. But what I found was, once things started getting going a lot. Okay, I should start at the beginning. The story is told from the perspective of a guy named Tommy, a 30-something-year-old who is an aspiring playwright, but is stuck in a marketing job. And he and his group of friends, they find out that one of their old friends died from an apparent suicide, and so they go out at a bar to mourn him, and then they go to that same bar a couple nights later because it's closing down, and suddenly the friend that they knew died was suddenly there again, back to life after an apparent supernova had exploded in the sky the previous evening. And so basically, the rest of the book explores the fallout from that. But the narrator, Tommy, what he does is he ends up starting a religion inspired by his friend's resurrection. So I thought that was an interesting way to explore how religions are formed and some of the things that go into an organized religion. And what's going to end up happening in the story is that one of the group friends named, I believe, his name is Rory Sutton, and he becomes a tech billionaire, and he's going to attempt to take over the religion. So it's kind of like this story of essentially religion versus capitalism. It may be interesting to some readers. I am a bit curious to see how this story unfolds. And one of the things I did like is that the story kind of captures the spirit of the struggling artist, like the yearnings a creator has to create when at the same time assured by society to get a traditional job and just quote unquote conform like the rest of the world. Tommy and his friends are more on the rebellious side. They're kind of like this band of outcasts, and they basically they are at that point in life where they're still trying to rebel against the system essentially. And so, long story short, yeah, I could imagine myself continuing with the story. And if you want to pick up a physical copy, it is available on bookshop.org, barnesandnoble.com, and house.com, which is a large independent bookstore based out of Portland, Oregon.
And I've got all the links to those. I've got all the links down in the description box below. Bookshop also has an affiliate program. I didn't know this, but I'm gonna see if we can sign up for that as well.
Cool.
Yeah, Bookshop is kind of like the bookstore-owned alternative to Amazon, so it's kind of a nicer way to buy books, but you can't get the books for free there. So, so pluses and minuses.
Yeah. Plus
All right.
side, you'd be supporting independent bookstores.
Yes, always good. All right. Next, let's make this a little bit bigger for you guys. We have A Taste of Vampire by D.S. Murphy, the first of 4 books in the Kingdom of Blood and Ash, a dark fantasy series. The next 2 books are $1 each. And the last one is currently available for pre-order and will be coming out at the end of this month. The entire series is in Kindle Unlimited. All right, so Emily is a human living on the edges of her compound society, struggling to help support her mother and siblings with limited resources. And the compound is surrounded by electric walls, and then there's toxic ash and mutant animals. And she goes outside the walls and runs into 3 elites. So I guess they're like some kind of super people. And they kill a large stag for sport and begin to torture Emily. And then a 4th elite, Damien, shows up and rescues her. And he lets her go, but she wants to take the stag, the dead stag, back to her family to feed them. And so he throws it over the compound wall for her, so that like she can bring it home. And then in the next chapter, she's preparing for the choosing. So this is an annual ceremony where every young woman who who has turned 17, is offered to the elite as a consort and gets to leave the poverty of the compound, and it also helps provide a better life for their families. She's positive that she won't get chosen, but then is terrified when her attacker chooses her at the ceremony. And Damien again intervenes at the last moment. He's a prince, and he invokes his right to claim Emily over everybody else. And she says goodbye.
Volunteer as tribute.
I know, right? So she says goodbye to her family and friends, because she has a month-long trial period that she might not make it through. And so Carla says that she's enjoying the dystopian setup. So basically there's biological warfare and nuclear fallout, which have led to the creation of immortality elixir, thus the elites, but it needs blood to sustain it. So they're basically futuristic vampires. She says it's a cool setting to explore a cross-class romance, and she really likes Emily as a character. She likes the setup and the stakes, and she says it's shaping up to be a really fun fantasy kind of romance read. All right, next is a book that I read, or I started reading, City of Storms by Kat Ross, the first book of 4 in the Night Marked fantasy series. The second book is $4, the third book is $5, and the fourth book is currently available for pre-order and will be coming out next month. It's not in Kindle Unlimited. The author has been on this list a few times before. So in this world, people get magical tattoos called marks, which suppress people's worst impulses. But sometimes these marks go crazy and do the opposite, and they release inhibitions and cause people to do horrible, crazy things, up to and including murder. And Alexei is a priest, and his job is to hunt down people whose marks have flipped before anybody gets hurt. And to help him, he has a kennel full of mark hounds, dogs bred to smell the moment a mark flips and to follow it to its source. So at first, when I was reading this, I thought this was going to be an epic fantasy, but then Alexei's partner, Patrick, drives up in a car smoking a cigarette. So I guess it's not epic fantasy. And the names sound Russian, but are a little bit off. So maybe something like the Shadow and Bone books, but a little bit closer to the present time, technology-wise. So they're living in a world called Via Sancta, which is composed of 4 city-states. They have electricity and telephones, umbrellas and taxis, and waterproof mascara, but they also have knights and mages. I was very much getting caught up in the story. Like I said, it reminds me of the Shadow and Bone books by Lee Bardugo, which were recently made into a Netflix series, which is also awesome. I recommend those books as well. Okay, next we have The Frozen Frontier by Marie Wilkens, Alexandria Clark, and Robert J. Walker. And Alex read the beginning of this book. And this is a box set of 3 EMP survival books. An EMP is an electromagnetic pulse. It kills electronics, but doesn't touch people, plants, or animals. It can be caused by a solar flare or a nuclear bomb or an EMP generator. A very popular genre. So these 3 books are part of the 46-book EMP Survival in a Powerless World series. And the other books are between $2 and $5 each, but they're all in Kindle Unlimited. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you've got like an infinite amount of reading. And from what I can tell, most of them are standalone books, so you don't have to read them in order. This box set includes They Come at Night by Marie Wilkens, Blackout by Alexandria Clark, and Into the Dark by Robert Walker. Wilkens and Walker have both been on our list before multiple times. So there's plenty to read here. And he read the first 4 chapters of the first book, They Come at Night. Layla works for Big Jim's Trail Tales, where she takes people on horseback rides in the countryside near Austin. And she wants to quit her job since it seems her boss is a scumbag who's underpaying her. But her boss actually owns her horse. So she plans to steal the horse and get out of the state. and the boss's son catches her trying to leave, and then this power goes out. And so she runs off with a horse. They make it to the next town, where she meets up with some friends and realizes that all electricity is dead. And Layla's friends say they're going to Mississippi and invite her to tag along. Alex says he likes the start of this book. Layla is likable enough as a character, and he likes the horse. And the author does a good job introducing everybody and giving her backstory. The horse used to belong to her, but her drug addict mother sold him to her shady boss without Layla's permission. So Alex says he likes this one, and he's thinking of continuing reading it. And plus, if you like it, there's like 2 other books in this set. And finally, we get to the number 1 book on today's bestseller list. But before I tell you what it is, I want to thank our Patreon supporters. So there we go. Patreon supporters: Marie Leclerc, Humphrey Price, Mary Stoll, Alexander KOROLOV, Avery Parks, Terrence Smith. Thanks, Terrence. Brad Center, David Perlmutter, Samantha Bryant, Melody Friedenthal, Anastasia KOROLOV, and Amira Lutfi. We love you guys. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. All right, so let us move on to the number 1 book on today's list, The Farthest Star by A.R. Knight. It's the first of 3 books in the Far Horizons sci-fi adventure series. The other books are $4 each, but the entire series is in Kindle Unlimited. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but Kindle Unlimited, if you don't know, is where you pay $10 a month and you read all the books that you want. It's kind of a Netflix for books. It's a great deal if you read more than a couple of books a month, which I do, so I'm a subscriber. I'm not necessarily a giant fan of Amazon, but if you read a lot, this is a great deal. So Tim McHugh read this one, and he says this book takes place on a starship traveling the galaxy in the far future. And the main character is a robot. So it begins kind of slowly. The Gamma is the android. He wakes up on a ship and doesn't know why he's there, and he's trying to figure it out. There's no humans around, and so Gamma is on his own trying to figure out what he wants to do, and he has to learn to use his mechanical body. There are other characters there. There's the librarian and somebody named Katie. I guess they're not human. But they kind of have their own goals, and he has to figure out what's happening and what's going on. So he says, Tim says the writing in this book is very good. It flows well, and the pacing is very slow to start, but he expects the pace to pick up once Gamma understands what he's doing there. But Tim says he doesn't plan to stick with this one. But if you like unique space travel stories, you'll probably like this one. I might check it out because it sounds like the kind of thing I might like reading. And it sounds a little bit like the premise of Project Hail Mary, where the protagonist wakes up with no memory on a spaceship traveling to another star. So, and I love that book.
I was going to say the premise kind of reminds me of WALL-E.
Or WALL-E, yeah.
WALL-E! That's a cute movie.
So that is it for today's list. I'm going to go and upload this video and turn on the fan because it's 90 degrees here in Massachusetts. And that's why I don't have my green screen up behind me, which is why my arms keep disappearing, because it's too hot for a green screen. I want some air moving at least a little bit. Anyway, I will see you guys next week. If you don't want to miss any of these, subscribe. We also have a newsletter that comes out every Friday afternoon, so you can get the list of the top 10 books and what we think about them in your email box every Friday afternoon, just in time for you to pick up some weekend reading. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining me, and thanks Terrence for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody.